There we go. We're recording now. If you guys have not gotten your cash flow quadrant book, let me tell you something. You are missing a treat. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and we're going to talk about it, right? Nick Pagano is going to be on. You know, we're going to talk about the E quadrant right here. We're going to talk about the S. We're going to talk about the B. We're going to talk about the I. All right. Now, chapter one of the things that we talked about is, you know, just why don't you get a job? I remember when I got started. Well, let me put it this way. I remember when I lost my job and I was going to be an entrepreneur. I started with the janitorial business. And it's interesting because Nick Pagano tried to talk me out of it. He said, you know what, man, this is too much work. You know, there's way more easier ways to make money than working that hard. And he set up a meeting with a guy by the name of Brad Griffin. Brad had owned a cleaning business for about 10 or 15 years. And he literally instructed me. He said, look, I don't want to talk you out of your dreams and goals. But one of the things that he did say, he said, Von, there is easier ways to make money. And I thought I could do it by myself. You know, I literally had to start something because I had resigned or got fired, however you want to push it, right? It was almost like the boss said, who was a good friend of mine, like, you know, this isn't going to work. I was like, I know, man, I quit. He was like, good, because I was going to fire you. But that was my journey into being an entrepreneur. So I had my back up against the wall. And it was in 1996, Nick and I had got together and Nick said, are you sure you want to do it? You know, let me tell you this, the importance of having good people in your life, mentors. Even though people know me as Nick's sponsor, what you do not know is that Nick had been my mentor. Nick had seen me make mistakes. Nick had, you know, one of the interesting things is I was trying to be an investor without going through the proper, you know, process of being an investor. And I called Nick up and I said, Nick, I got this guy. You know, it's just so funny how things happen. I said, Nick, I got this guy. I had met this guy in Indianapolis at a social work event that I was doing. And he told me what his name was. And then, you know, I guess he called me out of the blue and he said, hey, I need some help. I need to raise some money. And I was like, wow. He said, I need to raise about 500,000. And I said, well, I can introduce you to Nick. And Nick and his investment group over a period of 24 months came up with, I think, about $350,000. That's what the judgment was for. And see, I wanted to move from that employee quadrant quickly to the S quadrant, right into that investor quadrant, right? Because this is exactly what Nick taught me, right? But there's skill sets, there's things you have to understand. And I didn't understand that process. I want you guys to think about something. In 24 hours, Nick came up with 350 grand. And to make a long story short, the guy ended up robbing Nick. And I mean, literally robbing me, right? Just the little $18,000 that I had invested, thinking I was going to be rich. I remember Nick, me and Sarah, you know,
I remember that story.
I was saying to Sarah, you know, we're going to be paid in 90 days. And we start counting how we was going to spend our millions of dollars, right? And Nick, it didn't happen that way.
No, it did not. No,
it didn't happen that way. But let me say this. Okay. I think for a year or so, I was embarrassed and I didn't even want to talk to you because I was embarrassed. And again, one of the things that you said, you had a meeting with me. I can't remember where we met, but after I had met with your attorney, Kevin Pico, who wanted to make sure I wasn't involved in the deal, right? But
right.
One of the things that you said that we sat down, and I'll never forget it, right? Because my cousin that you know, Larry, right? We won't say a last name, but Larry had made me some financial promises, and he didn't keep those financial promises. I had lost my job, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had gotten involved in direct sales again. Sarah didn't think it was going to work. I had made bad financial decisions and I was moping around. And why was I moping around? Well, because I have no money left. I feel paralyzed. The mentor that I had, I introduced to a guy, took 350 grand from. My little 18 grand that I had set aside, gone. Nothing. What do you do? And I remember that conversation we had, and it was this word that changed my financial life to make me say, you know what, I'm going to take the bull by the horn. It was when you said, Von, you know what? Sometimes backyard deals like that happen overnight, but I should have been smarter. I should have dotted my I and crossed my T T's, I don't hold you accountable. And I looked at you, me and my cousin Larry was fighting over 10 grand. You and your investment group had lost 350,000 and we had remained friends. You never said anything bad about me, never called my mom or my dad, said you had been robbed or I took advantage of you. See, I was trying to go from that employee quadrant to the S quadrant, to the business quadrant, to the investor quadrant. And one of the things I was lacking, Nick, was skills.
Yep.
I was lacking discipline. Now, let me say this too, as we talk about this, because Nick, you and I met recently, right?
Right.
And one of the things that I realized is, you know what, I have done quite well, right? But again, that's all relative. I've done a little bit better than the majority of my peers outside of the athletic friends that I have who play professional basketball. But then just sitting talking to you, I said, you know what, man, I could do so much better. And as I picked up this book and I started reading, I said to myself, you know what? I need to begin to get some stuff together. So Nick, as we talk about the different quadrants, I just want to read a few things and I'll have you comment on it, right?
Okay.
One of the things that he says in this book, just kind of a key thought, he says, changing quadrants is often a change at the core of who you are. Isn't that, man, that was so important because I was trying to go from the E to the I, but what I didn't have was those core value systems that you need in order to be an investor. Nick, how important are those core values in moving from quadrant to quadrant?
Yeah, the core values and the core knowledge are crucial because what really happened on that one particular deal is both of us probably got a little on the greedy side. We thought, well, if I can invest, because you were thinking if you can invest X, you'll make Y. I was thinking if I invested X, I could make 10 times Y. It's a great deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the lessons I learned is that you can only do good deals with good people.
Mm.
And everybody thinks they've got a really good deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I went down and found my cash flow quadrant game. Mm-hmm. I have two copies of the cash flow quadrant game. One personally signed by Kiyosaki himself way back when. So it's been a part of my life as it has been for years. That going from quadrant to quadrant is crucial because if you're on the left side and you have active income, the statistics are staggeringly against you ever getting ahead. Mm-hmm. 77% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and I don't understand why people want to live that way.
You know what, Nick? And one of the things that we're going to get into is exactly why people do that, right? So I want to read this. Robert Kiyosaki is talking about, he says, one day over lunch, I talked to my rich dad about my educated dad. You guys know the concept, right? The rich dad is the guy who wasn't as educated. The educated dad was the one who had the master's degree, and he was the one that you would look at. And he was the one that people say, well, this person is of more importance, right? But the rich dad is just a business owner. Very wealthy business owner, but this is what he said. He says, your father and I, he's talking to young Kiyosaki, and he said, your father and I aren't the same people at the core, said Rich Dad. While we both have fears, doubts, beliefs, strength, and weaknesses, we respond or handle those core similarities quite different. Now, if I take you and Larry at that point, right now, Larry has now become the investor, right? But think about this. Larry's response was to argue over 10 grand. Your response was to say, look, young business Vaughn, let me show you. I don't hold it against you. We both make mistakes. Did you have anything to do with it? No, okay, God, I understand. I didn't think you did. But I learned my lesson. So Nick, what could have kept me was this. I could have said to myself, I'll never get involved in another business again. Now, let me say this. we could use the word investment, because I'm real big of my team not using that word, but we can use the word investment as it relates to us. But we can't use the word investment as it relates to getting people to buy Surge 365, because you and I, we don't have our security license, right? But it's
Well, I
okay.
do. I do,
Right.
but
Well, you do, right. But it's okay for you to say, I invested $500
that's right.
in 365. But what you can't sell, you can't transfer that to somebody and say, well, you need to invest money in this, right? So I just want to let you guys know that.
Yep.
But Nick, I want to read this one too. He's, because he was, because the educated dad decided he was going to start a business and he failed miserably, right? But one of the things that the rich dad said was this. He says, when your educated dad, right, or your, what we call the poor dad, tried to cross over from the E quadrant, was an employee, to the B quadrant, right? Because he started a business. He got blacklisted or blackmailed, and he couldn't get a job in that, in that place, in that state again, right? He had been blackballed. He said, intellectually, he could understand the process. Oh, Nick, this is good. But he couldn't handle it emotionally. When
Right.
things didn't go smoothly, he began to lose money. He didn't know what to do to solve problems. So he went back to the quadrant he was most comfortable in, Nick. So one of the things that you said is, you said, I don't understand why people do it. But Nick, they do it because for them, it's a level of comfort. They go back to what they know. So
Right.
what would you say to that person?
Well, I would say that you need to look at yourself, and this is a perfect time of year to do that, right? Because everybody's setting goals for 2019. If you've been living the way you've been living for the last year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and you are not getting ahead financially and starting to put money aside for your retirement, um, you are, you're the definition of insanity, right? You keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. How do you ever think you're going to start socking money away for retirement? Because here's the one thing I think that is universally true. 1 year from today, everybody on this line will be 1 year older. What
Wow.
are you going to do about it? And
You
if
know,
if it's the same thing as you did last year and the year before and the year before, if you're in the 77% of the American population that is living paycheck to paycheck, um, we have a better way.
you know what, Nick, we do. I want to read this too. It says, when the fear of losing money, this is Rich Dad, right? He says, when the fear of losing money and failing becomes too painful inside. And think about how many people you get involved in the business, right? Remember,
Mm-hmm.
the guy starts a business and then all of a sudden, he has some failings and he doesn't get the success he wants. And he goes back to what's comfortable. See, that new person that you're signing up, they're going to fail. Listen, when the fear of losing money and failing becomes too painful inside, a fear we both have. Now, Nick, you have it, I have it. The people that you bring in the business, they have it, right? He says, but
Right.
he chooses, right? A lot of people choose to seek security and choose to seek free. And I choose, Nick, you choose, right? We are in search because we choose to do what? We
Seek
choose to
freedom.
seek freedom.
Yeah, we
You know
seek
what you
freedom.
did? You seek freedom.
Yep. But here's the scary thing about that comment though. Um, going where you're seeking security may not really be secure because it's a binary decision, right? That's a binary world, which means, like in your case, Vaughn, your boss came to you one day and said, "Hey, by the way, Vaughn, either you're going to resign or I'm going to fire you." It did not matter if you're doing your job. There was a budget cut or whatever reason, right? You were either getting that check or not. It's either 100% or zero. It's binary.
Well, Nick,
Here,
I'm sorry. Go
here
ahead.
we have, yeah, here we have an opportunity to have a little bit more. And I'm going to challenge you if you decide to get involved. Because Vaughn, remember way back when, and I got my first $1,000 bonus, and I said, "Boy, Vaughn, this is great. I like this $1,000 bonus thing." can I get one every week? And, you said, well, I guess you can, but no one ever has. And that was probably brilliant on your part. And it was incredibly motivating to me because I thought, I've always been one of those guys that is an overcomer, right? If you tell me I can't do it, I'll go do it.
Well, Nick, you know what? You're talking about something. One of the things you told me, you said the rules of money is totally different now.
Totally different.
I mean, just think about it, right? You would have, and just think about people, right? Living paycheck to paycheck. Now, first of all, let me say this. I want to be sensitive to people who just may not know, who just may not have the knowledge. And it's not that we're talking about people's situation, right? We're providing information. So hopefully that won't be you. But Nick, you always talk about the rules of money is totally different than when our parents grew up.
Totally. Totally different.
Let's talk about that seeking freedom. If someone has said, if you work for the government, right, go to school, get a degree, work for the government, get a good government paying job, you're going to have a pension. Who would have ever thought that? Just
well, yeah. I mean, there are lots of people, and very appropriate comment, Vaughn. There are lots of people that work for the government because I haven't heard because it's a good pay. I have heard because the government has great benefits, great benefits, right? And now look at what's happened. The government is in a shutdown period. Now, theoretically, everybody that is not getting paid will get the money that is owed to them. But what happens in the meantime? Because everybody still has mortgage payments or rent payments. Everybody still has their car payment. And clearly, everybody still has to pay for groceries. So if you were living paycheck to paycheck in December, and now you don't have any income coming in, what do you do? If you have no place to fall back on, if you have no savings in the bank, if you have no additional income coming in, what do you fall back on?
That's why I love Surge. So Nick, I know we don't have a lot of time and we're going through some stuff, but I also want to highlight this, right? They're having another conversation. One of the things he said, well, you know what? I wonder if my dad, right, meaning his biological dad, if his dad can change from one quadrant to the next. And he says this. He says, oh, sure, Rich Dad said. He says anyone can change, but changing quadrants isn't like changing jobs. Listen, you guys, pay really close attention. Remember what I said. The hardest part of what we do is getting a W-2 person to think like an entrepreneur.
Right.
That is the hardest part of what we do. Now, listen to this. Okay. Nick, a W-2 works 40 hours a week. On Friday, guess what they know they're going to get?
A check.
An entrepreneur could work 80 hours a week. Guess what he doesn't know if he's going to get?
Well, right.
But he knows what? He knows it's coming.
Yep.
He knows this is
right. He knows it's. I mean, Jeff. There are pictures on the internet of Jeff Bezos when he started Amazon, sitting in his office by himself. You could read stories of Jeff Bezos, who started Amazon, getting book sales and going to the post office and mailing the books himself. And now he's worth billions. If you look at the Forbes 400 richest people list, there aren't people up there that have jobs. They all own something. And as we talked about last week, it is possible to be in multiple quadrants, right? And the difference is that on the left side, you have active income. You are doing something to earn that money. On the right side, it's passive income. So you are getting paid for other things. Either you were smart and you made an investment, or you built a team and you're getting on the 11th of the month perhaps a residual income check, and the 20th of the month you're getting a director check. That seems like that's pretty smart.
You know what, Nick? That is huge. But you brought up Jeff Bezos' office. Look at his office. I mean, I got it right there on your screen if you can see it. See, I know, when you read the stories, he put a bunch of time in.
A bunch of time,
I mean,
right?
we're talking 8 hours a week. For Jeff, for that first week, for Bill Gates, for these guys, when they're first getting started, they're consumed. They're spending almost 20 hours a day drafting their plan, thinking about who they need to talk to, getting rejected. I mean, this is just his office. I can almost guarantee you when he walked away, look at it. He had it looked like he had that banner printed on his computer. You guys remember the little banner that we used to feed into the computer? They had the little preparations at the end and we used to tear it, right? See, yeah. This was his first office. Now, listen to this, Nick, because I really want to get this. He says, you know what? You have to change at the core of who you are. The change is easier for some than others simply because some people welcome change and others fight it. And changing quadrants is most often a life-changing experience. It becomes a change as profound as the age story of a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. Now, listen to this, you guys. This is huge. Not only will you change, Nick, but so will your friends. Go right ahead.
Yep. You made a point earlier today that was, I think, profound. You chose to surround yourself with people that were quote unquote smarter than you financially. Let me tell you two big mistakes that people make that they think are not mistakes, but are mistakes. Okay. The first one is going to H&R Block to get your tax refund, or Jackson Hewitt, or whatever. That is a fundamental mistake, and I know we won't have time to go into a lot of details on that. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to H&R Block or Jackson Hewitt and you think getting a tax refund and you think those guys are doing you a favor, stop it immediately and go find yourself an accountant that is that knows the home-based business. And if you don't have one, call me and I'll get you connected to mine. The second thing that I think people do is they take quote the easy way out, which is financially devastating, which is make the minimum payments on their credit card. Devastating. As of today, Vaughn, we should make an order to not do that. If you're making minimum payments on your credit card, quit it. If you're planning to get a tax refund this year, quit it.
Wow. Well, hey, Nick, I'm going to read, and I'm going to read fast, and I'm going to give you the closing words. But listen, he goes on. He says, when I was 9, my rich dad began to teach me the skills necessary to be successful in the B and I quadrant. One of those skills, listen to guys, I know this. One of those skills was to get beyond the surface of a person, engage into their core. If you ever hear me do a 3-way phone call, see, I'm trying to get at the core of that person. See, when someone says, well, I just don't have time. No, you got to get to the core. Why are they saying, who is this person? Listen, he says, if I listen to a person's words, I begin to see and feel their souls. He says, values that my rich dad, let's talk about E real quick. I apologize. People that's in the E quadrant. A person who comes from the E quadrant might say, I am looking for a safe, secure job with good pay and excellent benefits. S quadrant. A person who, Nick, I want you to talk about this one. A person who comes from the S, right? I was thinking about, I started a janitorial business, and man, that business ran me. A person who comes from the S quadrant might say, my rate is $75 per hour. My normal commission rate is 6% of the total price, or I can't seem to find good people who want to work and do the right job, or I got more than 20 hours into this project. Nick, when you look at the S quadrant, and that's exactly what that you didn't want me to become, because let me tell you, when I had my janitorial business, I couldn't leave it for 3 days.
Nope. Nope.
I mean,
Yeah,
go ahead.
you bought into you were a little brainwashed. You didn't know at the time probably about the four quadrants, but you knew that being an employee was for most people it's a paycheck to paycheck existence. But the people say, "Oh, got to start your own business," not realizing that what you really need to do is create a system within that business, because you've got to be able to find a way to have money come in when you're sleeping.
Well,
And
Nick,
and you couldn't, right, Vaughn? You
no, I
were
could. I want to read this, and then I'll give it over to you, and we're going to be done. He said, "Listen, the S. This is the S. This was me. This is what I'm telling you. There's a lot of people out there, real estate agents, insurance brokers. Listen, these are people who want to be their own boss or like to do their own thing. I call this group the do-it-yourselfers.
hmm
Often, when it comes to the subject of money, a hardcore S doesn't like to have his or her income dependent on other people. In other words, if S work hard, they expect to get paid for their work. S's don't like having the amount of money they earn dictated by someone else or by a group of people who might not work as hard as they do. If they work hard, they expect to be paid well. Conversely, they also don't understand that if they don't work hard, then they don't deserve to be paid much. When it comes to money, they have fiercely independent souls. And then it goes on to talk about, you could tell you're in the S quadrant if you can't walk away from your business for a year and it's doing just as good as it was when you come back. Nick, you got the S quadrant. Go right ahead.
Yep. So on the left side of the quadrant, the B and the S, that again is active income. You have to do something to get it, whatever it is. Work an hour, work a day, whatever. You've got to do something. On the right side, what Kiyosaki is saying is there are ways that you can get paid for doing something a while ago, or investing by being a little smarter and investing in something because they needed some capital or whatever. So yeah, and I know that we're going to get into chapter 3 and talk about the the beauty of passive the beauty of passive income, and
Nick,
that's where we all want to get to.
now, no, hold on. You're exactly right. But let's talk about that for a minute because you and I had that meeting. I got a little money set aside. Sean Michael college tuition, if everything still goes as planned, is still paid for, thanks to 2007, 2008, 2009, and Sears stuff. But I also have some stuff there. But let me tell you, Nick, I realize that I am stuck in the B quadrant. And the I'm stuck there, right? I'm there's just some things that I'm yet and still. You and I had that conversation, but because I've been there so long, I haven't had this type of money saved up before. I act like I don't even know I have it, Nick. I know if I
Yep.
knew I have it, what would I do with it? You've been here with me before, and
Hopefully the right thing this time.
well,
Hopefully
hopefully,
the
right.
right thing to
And
see.
then you have money set aside, and you think you do all the right stuff because. And I want you to. I have a cousin, and is even separate. You know, when we did quite well, she followed me. She's one of my favorite cousins, and at the time she was working for Comerica, and she took over the account that kind of handles some of the stuff that we're going to pay Sean Michael. And then when the economy was doing bad, then whatever we put in, I'm even afraid to look at it. See, but I realized that, you know what? Remember we said we go back to what we're comfortable with?
Right.
It's almost putting me back in that employee mindset.
Yeah. Well, if you have money in the bank, that is not the same thing as being an investor.
And that's
Um,
what we're going to talk about.
right. The ultimate investor. I have a client who um, buys companies, and in my money management business, when we met with him, he said, I'm not going to invest money with you because I get a 30% return on my own equity
Mhm.
by buying other companies, because he had a system. And that's what real investors do.
Well, you know, Nick, we're going to talk about investors, but we still got to wrap up businesses. And I said we were going to be done, but we're going to go over a little bit. Let's talk about this. He says, those who are true Bs, right? Business owner. Now, I'm here, you guys. I've been an employee. I've been self-employed. Let me tell you something. As a self-employed person, I worked just as hard as I did as an employee. See, and as an employee, I knew I was going to get paid. As a self-employed person, I didn't know I was going to get paid. Listen, I had a contract from this was my spending money, right? This was my play money, right? $300 a month was my play money. Whatever I wanted to do with it, right? The rest of the money paid the bills, paid the employees. But this contract right here, this money, I cleaned a real estate business. And do you know they always just for whatever reason never really paid me when they were supposed to pay me? So the money that, I mean, I'm telling you, you guys, that S quadrant is dependent on you and you alone. If you're a barber, if you're a realtor, listen to this. This is why you want to go to the B, then we'll talk about the I a little bit later on. He says, those that are true Bs can leave their business for a year or more and return to find their business more profitable and running better than when they left it. Let me tell you something. There's a lady on my team, Angelita Bird. Nick, you know her. And Angelita would take a whole year vacation. And when she see things going, getting up and running, she'll call me, hey, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. Hey, Nick, let's get ready to go. And I'm thinking, she said, my income went up. What are you guys doing? And she'll come back. But listen to this. It says in a true S type of business, if the S left for a year or more, chances are there would be no business left to return to. Saying it simply, an S owns a job, a B owns a system, and then hires competent people to operate the system. We just tend to partner with other entrepreneurs. Or put another way, in many cases, the S is the system. It's all dependent on you. That is why they can't leave. B business owners can go on a vacation forever because they own a system, not a job. To be successful in the B requires ownership and control or control of systems and the ability, listen to this, you guys, it is the ability to lead people. There are so many people there. I have so much talent on my team. But one of the things that you have to be able to do is you have to be able to work well with others and lead people. Nick, I'll give you the final thoughts.
Okay, so appropriately at the beginning of this call, we were talking about coaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're the coach. And, there's two sides. We don't talk much about the two sides of coaching, but there's two sides to coaching. We talk to people about being coachable, and then we talk about coaching people. There's two sides. To be coachable means that you've got to have a desire to be better. And you've got to be willing to take the coaching from somebody else. Whether it be coaching go from the employee quadrant to the B quadrant to the S quadrant, wherever you are, you've got to make an honest assessment of where you want to get to and how we're going to help you. And I think if you are not coachable, if you're not willing to listen and ask for assistance, I think it's really tough to move quadrants. Really tough.
You know what, Nick, you are absolutely right. You guys, listen, let me tell you something. Now, Nick, when I first got involved in direct sales, you didn't pitch me on an opportunity. You put a book in my hand, said, Von, had you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad? That lightened me up some. You guys, let me tell you, you want to share an opportunity with people. You put this book in their hand and say, hey, look, I want you to read this book, and then give it, because listen, if you tell them to read this book, that means you have to go back and get it from them. Okay, whether it's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, whether it's this book, whether it's a book that's going to help peel back those layers of that employee mindset. See, go ahead, Nick.
Because people think they're doing the right thing, and they think that working hard is the answer because they've been told that from the time. We were all told that from the time we were whippersnappers, right? Work hard, work hard, work hard. Well, I look around and I see, pick a profession, right, Von? Teachers. Mm-hmm. They work so hard. but it's hard for them to get ahead. It's really hard for them to get ahead. Or, you know, the guy that drives into your subdivision on Thursday of the week or Tuesday, whatever, and picks up the garbage. Those guys work hard.
Yes.
But they're not getting ahead.
And Nick, let me tell you something. They, you know, and again, I keep turning pages, and I know you guys, we're going to cover this next week, but Nick, you and I, we always talk about that I quadrant. I'm not there, you are, but it says the I quadrant is listen to this. The I quadrant is the quadrant for working less, earning more, and paying less in taxes. If you want to know how you can recruit somebody, I want you to go up to somebody tomorrow and say, hey, look, I want you a part of my I quadrant team. What do you mean? It's working less, earning more, and paying less in taxes. You'll be amazed at some of the responses you get. Nick, another thing, and again, I keep saying this, but I keep opening the book and I keep seeing these highlights in a couple of minutes. But we are really done after you comment on this one, right?
Okay. Until next week. Until next week.
But it says the definition of wealth, and he's talking about income, expenses, assets, business, liability, all this stuff. Now, listen, you guys, if you don't have the book, you can't, you know, you really need the book in order to follow us, right? Because we're not going to be able to cover everything in chapter 2. We're going to highlight some stuff. But Nick, what he says is this. He says the definition of wealth is the number of days you can survive without physically working and still maintaining your standard of living. For example, if your monthly expenses are $5,000 a month and you have $20,000 in savings, your wealth is approximately 4 months or 120 days. Wealth is measured in time, not in dollars.
Yep. Well, you know what? I'm gonna put a little thought in people's heads. We think, and we're gonna go into this in detail next week. We're gonna talk about net worth, but I'm gonna flip the table on what you people have been trained as a millionaire. Next week, we're going to talk about how to be a millionaire by creating a income producing asset as opposed to having $1 million in the bank. So we're going to talk about that next week.
Nick, yes, and I'll tell you why I'm excited. Listen, I realized I was reading this book. Okay, since 2006 till 2019 or 18, 19 is not here, for 12 months, if I decided not to work, I looked at the math, I looked at the numbers, right? Guess what? 6 figures.
Right.
No, listen, every year. I think there was one year where it was a little bit under 6 figures. But think about this. We created an income. So I got the B down pretty good. That's what Surge was able to do. That's what direct sales was able to do. Now I need to do what Nick and Juliet does. Invest.
Yep.
And invest. And listen, don't be afraid of, I'm reading this book and it's like, and even though I've read it 3 or 4 times, it says, as an investor, you learn the game. You don't have to lose money. And Nick, you're going to teach us how to do that. Well, hey, look, you guys, I want to say thank you very much, Nick. It has been awesome. Man, I just thank you. Matter of fact, you put Rich Dad, Poor Dad in my hand. You put Cash Flow Quadrant in my hand. I want to say thank you so very much. What we're going to do now is, well, you know what? I just want to turn it over real quick. I'm going to give Janice 30 seconds. I'm going to give Rick 30 seconds if he's on here. And we're going to turn over to Harvey Zay. Hey, Janice, if you're on, come on up. Janice, yes, no? All right, Rick Reese, are you there? All right, well, we're going to turn it right over to Harvey Zay. Harvey, take it away. Oh, do I have to unmute people? Oh, hold on just a minute. I'm sorry.
Did you unmute? Yeah, I'm unmuted now.
All right, go ahead.
Okay.
Take it over, Harvey Zay. There you go.
There you go.
All right, thank you. I'm still writing notes, but we'll continue next week because we're going to learn more about how we can have more money, more time. Anyway, a lot we're going to learn. But we started out tonight. That was very interesting, Vaughn. You did share with you being very transparent about your beginning investing experience. And of course, at that same time, you reminded us not to use that word in talking about Surge as an investment, which is good because that can cause a problem. So we learned to be investors. We're not asking people to join Surge to be investors, but to have their own business working at home and leaving the W-2. And we're going to talk a little more about that, but that's quite a switch, like changing quadrants. But Nick has given us some great nuggets that I picked out as he was talking too. He was saying to do well, to make good deals, you got to do it with good people. That makes a difference. So you need to know more about the people that you're investing with or you're getting in business with. Going from one quadrant to another is crucial. So, and Vaughn did explain to us too that going from one quadrant to another is like going from a W-2 to going to be an entrepreneur. Because when you change, he also pointed out that your friends change too for some reason, and you start to earn more money, you have more freedom, and you have more fun. So natural that gives you a different picture. And that's why our business is so good, because we do those things. But the rules of money has changed a great deal over the years, and it has. Even the government rules of money. But we know there are no more big pensions like there used to be from Chrysler, Ford, and GM and so forth. That has changed. So many things have changed. But we want to understand, too, that you do not make minimum payments on your credit cards. Oh, that was Nick's tip. That was good. Do not make minimum payments on your credit card, or also don't expect or generate tax refunds. You're giving them your money, you get a little bit back. You could have used it to become an investor when you learn how to do that and get into the quadrant and so forth. But think about that too. But Nick was telling us too that doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results is, of course, the definition of insanity. When you work for years, paycheck to paycheck, not putting anything aside, not making any plans for your retirement, then that's like walking off a cliff financially, so to speak. Be willing to accept coachable. Coachability is important. You cannot be coachable if you're not willing to be, and you cannot coach people if you don't get along well with them. So that's a combination of learning to be good with people, to be a good coach, to be coachable, and that's our business in Service 365, working together. And Vaughn pointed out so many times that you do have to have a relationship with your leader, and of course with the people that you're leading together. It works well together. So wealth is measured by time and not money. Nick told us you can live so long with so many dollars, and that's it. And that's a good way to analyze your wealth. How long would you live if you had no income? How long would you live financially with no income if you only had a few $1,000s and your expenses took it up in a month or two or 3 or 4? So think about that and see how far you can go. And thanks again, Vaughn, for sharing with us how possible it is to have a 6-figure income in our business for a long period of time. And we can all do it. We're in the ring. Now we have to just do the work. Thanks again for being on the call, everybody. Thanks, Vaughn and Nick. We look forward to next week now. The book is great, and I'm going to read it over again, too, and keep up with it, because it's every time we read it, we'll find something we didn't see before. Have a good night, everybody. A great week. Stay warm if you're in the cold climate. And if you're in the warm climate, let's warm it up all over the country in our business. Let's make it happen. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good night.